What is up, y'all? This is 25 Logic Pro tips for beginners. Let's get into it. What is up, y'all? It is your boy Kirk here, and I have been producing for 20 years. I've written music for movies. I've produced music that's been released on labels like Blanco y Negro, Juicy Music, a whole bunch more. I've actually even released music that has been supported by Skrillex, Jackie, Party Favor, Diplo, all the folks there. Let's jump into Logic Pro. I've done all of this in Logic Pro, and you don't need to have like a crazy session to be able to do this. So first things first, let's talk about some workflow tips. So once you open up Logic Pro, you'll get this window here, and I've talked about this in a previous video, but I'll run through it again really quick. So you have this window where you're able to choose the kind of track that you want to do. I mean, you could do a software track, you could do audio, drummer track, external MIDI, guitar, bass, and basically like drummer and guitar, bass will basically set it up for you. An instrument track, you can do like whatever software instruments you have as well. So that means the stuff that comes with Logic and the stuff that also you can, download and buy and all that stuff. And then audio is like really good for like when you're recording your vocals or recording like guitar or bass in there. This will make it easy, but I usually start with this. So that does that. So we'll jump in. First things first, for workflow, what you want to do is be able to learn how to use your key commands here. So one of the most important key commands is actually Command Z, which is like undo. So if you've ever been typing or whatever and you hit Command Z, that's undo. Works in here too. And another thing that you can use is C here. So basically C, what that does is that brings up your cycle range here, this little yellow bar. You could click that as well. And this is just what you're looping. So if you play it, this will loop back. Cool. You can kind of see it will loop. So this is super helpful when you're just like trying to get ideas down really quick. I normally will work in like an 8-bar loop and then like flesh out my track from there. So usually I set it like that. Another key command that you're going to need to know for workflow is K. K turns on your metronome here. You see that? And that helps you to stay really like on point. And actually, once you open up Logic Pro, it'll probably look a little something like this. And you don't want it to look like this. Trust me, this information is not enough for when you're making tracks, and you're gonna want to see more information here. You got a bunch of like important things, but I want you to actually go in here into this menu, and I want you to set it to custom, and then you got like a whole bunch more information, and you're able to do a whole bunch more. And you can see what your CPU is like and all of that good stuff. And this is going to be useful if you're using a lot of software instruments and heavy like kind of plugins. Okay, so here's another workflow tip that will actually allow you to be way quicker when you're looking through big sessions. So if we take a look at this session here, this is my track, Lay It Down. This is like the full session before I made stems, and it's about 70 tracks. It's very easy to get lost in a big session. Now, this may not be a big session to a bunch of people, but for me, these days, this is a bigger session. So let's go ahead and create a little bit of differentiation between the tracks here. So we have, let's see, we've got like a bunch of like ARPs and synths here. Let's take a listen to what these are. So those are synths that we used in this track, and say we wanted to group them and color code them. Right now they're green and the colors are all over the place. Let's go ahead and color code them by hitting Control C. And then we could pull up the colors here, and let's say we want to color these purple. So now these are purple. But there's another step of organization that we can actually go into, and say you want to be able to just really organize things quickly without having to route things and learn how to do ins and outs, and it's like a lot of things. You can actually create a track stack. So Logic has these things called track stacks, which are folders that allow you to organize your sessions really easily. You can actually see that I have a track stack here for my drums. Basically, I can just hide all my drums, and all my drums are there. So say they're already mixed and they're good to go and I don't have to worry about them anymore. Those drums are already set. So say I want to do that for the synths that we just color coded. So all you got to do is select all of your synths just like that by holding Shift and clicking on the first one and the last one. And then you hit Shift Command D, and then it pulls up this window here. Now you have two types of stacks you can do. You have a folder stack, which is basically a really basic, simple stack. It doesn't allow you to add effects to it or anything. So this is like really simple and not as good for mixing, and we'll cover that in another video. But then we have the summing stack, and the summing stack is something that's like super good. It allows you to route things and just add a bunch of effects. So for example, if I wanted to, I would pick this one, the summing stack, and then now it allows me to add plugins on here. Now if I go back and do the other one, it will not allow me to put plugins. It's just a bus, and it doesn't allow me to do any of the special processing on the group. So we're going to do that again. We're going to pick summing stack, boom, just like that. And then also we can rename it as synths, boom. And then we can even color code it too with these colors. So you do select them all, option C, and that brings up the color, boom. And now that whole section is purple, which is very cool. And the track is also purple. And why is this important? This is important because it allows you to like navigate through your session very quickly. Now, before you're seeing an early session for this song, Lay It Down. If you want to check it out, you can check it out. But I didn't actually start organizing it until I was ready to print stems. This is an easy way for you to print stems and an easy way for you to like save a session as like something that could make it easy for you to produce. So that leads me into this next thing where you can save templates as things you could start from. So for example, if you're doing like the same thing over and over again, you have to create these tracks over and over again, you could save different layers of templates. I've created this pop vocal template for y'all to even grab. You could just grab it from my website. And this is something that I use all the time. And I use these same settings when I'm recording vocals for people or recording vocals just for myself. So this pop template allows you to have a bunch of different things here. So we have a bunch of different things already set up. And I have some notes here as well for when you grab it and how to use this thing. So this actually uses all stock plugins for you to be able to create like really high quality recordings and mixes for vocals when you're recording. So I have a beat track, and then I have like a lead vocal track, a whisper track, and then I basically just did all of the effects that I would normally do on these buses. And as you can see, they're grayed out right now because you need to go ahead and hit the X key to pull up the mixer window. So you basically just select all of the tracks here, and we could turn on all the effects by just clicking them all on, just like this, all the effects, all the buses, and now everything will sound really cool and really good. So the real important thing about having templates is like you're able to actually start things that you normally would have to set up, and you're saving time on actually creating, and you're saving your mental energy on setting up things where these are all things you're always going to do. So you might as well just have them saved so you can just pull them up really quickly. I even have channel strips that I've saved in the past that I always use on every single song. And these are a couple of different things. So if you want to check out more about this template, I have a tutorial on my channel. You can check it out on the channel. So anyway, another thing that you can do in Logic that will help you be organized and really fast is actually set markers. So if you go to this menu right up here, you can see there's an event thing, there's a marker thing, there's tempo, signature, all this stuff. So if you set up markers, this will allow you to put arrangements in. So for example, say you had a song that you really liked the arrangement of. You could take that song, put it in here, and actually just write out the arrangement. So sometimes I will use it for this kind of thing. So I'll put it in here just like this, and a marker shows up right here at the top, and then you could click on this and actually change the name. So let's say intro, right? So let's go into here and we type in intro, boom. So now the intro is right here. So we could actually even set the length for it too. So let's say we want the intro to be 4 bars, boom, just like that. And then we can go by hitting the arrow keys, the comma and period keys, we can jump to the bar, and then we can set another one. You can even set different colors. So if you selected this one right here and hit option C, you can actually change the color to, we'll say the intro is orange, right? And then you can even go here and you could say this will be, chorus 1, boom. And then this will be, 4 bars, right? Set it to 4 bars. And then we can change the color by hitting option C. Select that one, and let's say this is like hype, so we'll make it red, right? Or it's super hot. Yeah, we'll make it red. So you could basically do this, and then you can arrange your track all the way through so that you don't have to guess what sections are what. And if you find an arrangement and in your tracks that really works and that you feel like just flows really well, you could just save that into your template as well. And there you go. You're like starting out. You don't even have to think about arrangement anymore. So it's a cool way to actually mark out tracks that you look up to, and then also mark out your own tracks if you want to just continue to write music in the same form and structure as well. This is really great for dance music because you need to have an intro, you need to have a build up, you need to have these sections. So this will be really good for those kind of tracks because then you can just make the correct arrangement for DJing music. Okay, so those are 5 things that will help you in your workflow in Logic Pro, but you're probably like, Kirk, okay, like I've got workflow down. How do I actually mix the stuff that I have, and where do I even start to get my stuff sounding good in the mix? I'm going to show you right now. So here are 5 tips that I will give you as a beginner to worry about mixing or get better at mixing. First things first is gain staging, right? So you have to make sure that the things that you're recording in, the volume is set correctly. So let's actually go over here. I use the UAD system here. I have an Apollo Twin and an Apollo X8 as well. And I use these to record my stuff just because I need something like a good signal chain coming in. Now, look at the signal of my voice. You can see that it is dancing in yellow, but it never really goes into the red. And that's on purpose. That's on purpose because I want the volume of my voice to be clear. I want you to be able to hear it and all of that stuff. You can very easily make it so that you can't hear it. So for example, if I take this channel strip off and I take this off and I take that off, look how quiet the signal is, even though I have a preamp on here. So this preamp is doing a couple of things and I'm making sure that the level is at a healthy level. I'll add that to bring some brightness out, add that to bring more brightness out. And then I have the the 1176, doing a bunch of compression and bringing my vocal up in volume as well. So this gain staging is important. So this is the first thing you do before you even get to the recording of anything or the mixing of anything. Just make sure your gains are set correctly so that you're not clipping and there's no red anywhere, unless you're using that as a creative tool. Okay, so the next thing that's really important, especially if you have a track like this is my track, Lay It Down, like from before, is subtractive EQ. So you want to make sure before you do anything, any adding or coloring or boosting or anything like that, that you're subtracting. So notice if we go on to this track here, I know I do it on every single track. I'm actually cutting out a lot of information before I'm boosting it. So I usually will cut out a lot of low end, all this stuff down here, because a lot of people won't hear it anyway. And this stuff up here, a lot of people won't hear it anyway. But obviously you have to remember each track you need to EQ it for the signal. So for example, if I'm listening to these hi-hats have high frequencies. They don't have a lot of low frequencies. So I cut out all these low frequencies. So I can go here and just notice how there's really nothing here that's registering. But if you don't cut that out, it will build up later on in your mix. So you want to make sure that you cut out those frequencies that are not necessary and not, integral to the sound that you're using. So this is going to be different for different like instruments, like your kick drum. You're obviously, you're going to want to keep it in a certain space, So we have that, and then we have this right here. So clap. Notice I didn't actually do any EQing. It just sat really well in the mix, so I didn't have to. But my bass, I totally EQ'd. So I could have kept it really bright like that, but then my vocal doesn't have space. In order to have space in your mix, you got to start cutting away frequencies and just kind of shaping things. Think of it like a big Lego model or something that you're making. Each piece needs to fit with each other piece. So it's the same thing. Each synth and each vocal, they need to fit well, and they all should have their place in the mix. Everything should be able to shine really well in the mix. Try not to have a ton of overlapping things. And if you're finding yourself overlapping a lot of things, try to take some things away and see if they even need to be in the mix. That's a free one for you. Okay, so here's another thing that it took me a really long time to understand, and it's called compression. And there's several different ways you can actually compress. There's sidechain compression, which I use a lot in dance music. And then there's just regular compression. For example, if we take a look at my vocal chain here, I have a compressor right here. So this is basically a fast acting compressor. It's got really quick release, really quick attack, and that's because I talk fast, and so I need it to work fast. For this, that's how I'm using it to catch all of the peaks in my voice, so the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and I'm trying to squash them together so that they're more consistent and that you can hear every word that I'm saying. This is a great way to grab detail out of your voice. It's a great way to grab detail out of any sound that you're using, like a guitar or a bass or anything like that. It's a great way to do that. So compression, think about it like this. It will make loud sounds quieter, soft sounds louder, and it acts like glue for your tracks. You can compress a single track or you can compress a whole group of tracks. So remember in the other section, we talked about these stacks. So say I wanted to compress all of these synths together so that they fit better. I could go in here and then grab this compressor and throw it on there, and I can affect the whole group like that. So bring the threshold down so it's doing something, change the ratio a bit so it's a little bit more, change the attack so it attacks a little bit quicker, and I could keep the release there. And I could change the auto gain turn that off, turn off auto. Sometimes you might want to keep that on. So I'm going to keep that on. So we're getting, if you look at this meter, we're getting about 6 dB of compression. So usually when you have 6 dB of compression, you can then turn up, your makeup gain to get that volume back, because the compressor will bring the loud sounds quieter, right? So the easiest way to think about compression is to just kind of like glue things together. Think about compression as your glue. So first you EQ, you pull out all the sounds, the frequencies you don't need, and then you grab that glue and you kind of squish things together. It actually like does wonders to your tracks and makes things clear and intelligible. Okay, so here's another thing that is super important when you're mixing. It's using time-based effects really, really well. Okay, so time-based effects are things like delays or echoes or reverbs. And when I first started out, I used to use reverbs all the time, and I used to just slap so much reverb on my tracks. And that was just me not knowing that like that's going to make things way harder for me in the long run. And also too, that was me just trying to cover up my track that doesn't sound that great. So one thing that I want to encourage younger producers and anyone who's watching this is don't drown your tracks in reverb. Go ahead and use reverb sparingly. Now, this is important. So let's go ahead and take a look at my vocal. So vocals, usually it's like the hardest, it's the culprit of having really bad, reverb and too much reverb. Okay, so let's take a listen to this verse, right?
Time to run it back, I'ma just let go. Do whatever it takes just to stay close. Take the money and the fame.
Okay, so notice I have a couple of buses here. You can totally put a reverb right on the track and use the mix knob on there. I've done that before, but for this track, I ended up using a different approach. So I have a delay track and I have this track, right? And you can see that I have literally no reverb on this. So this is dry, but because I have so much compression, you can hear what my room sounds like.
Time to run it back, I'ma just let go. Do whatever it takes just to stay close.
So there's already like a natural reverb in the track. So I didn't have to add too much more. So with reverb, you have to use it sparingly and use it intentionally. Don't just throw it on everything. So as you notice in the verse, I didn't have any reverb, but then this section is a different section and I actually start kind of singing. So I go ahead and I throw a little bit of reverb. So I have a couple of things going on. I usually put it on a bus, and this is like my sauce. And I'll throw like a little bit of Valhalla delay and then a Valhalla room as well with different settings. And then I also subtractive EQ this thing too, so that I'm not getting all this mud in the mix. So it could get very muddy.
But it's not so bright though. Can you show me the way to the place where the fear meets your face and the soul fades away this time?
So I basically just wanted to make sure that this was like very controlled chaos here. And then I also have another delay here, which is doing something different. And this is kind of like, I'm using it as actually traditional, like a traditional delay. And then I also am doing a couple of things like delay throws and all of these kinds of cool things that are, pretty dope for this kind of track. So we're not going to go deep into that. If you want to know more about it, let me know in the comments below. If you want me to go deep into like vocal production and mixing and that kind of thing, I will totally do that, but only if you let me know in the chat below. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, you should by now. If you're getting value from this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell to get notified whenever I drop a new video. So the last thing that is like really important inside of mixing and as a beginner, something that you can do really well, and this will help you become a better engineer and a better mixer, is actually using a reference track. And so you can totally just grab a track that you're really into, that you've downloaded or that you bought, and throw it at the top of your session. And we talked about this in the first section, but like you can use it as a reference to get your arrangement, but then you can also use it as a reference to check your mix against it. Does your track sound like that? And this will actually help you become way better at critical listening and will help you pick out different sounds. And then you'll be able to you'll hear the track and then you go ahead and mix it. Now, I've done this so many times. I would reference a whole bunch of other tracks, and I know a bunch of producers that still do this because they want to make sure that their mixes are measuring up. And it's a great practice. Okay, so now you're okay, you got the mix down, you're able to understand reference mixes and all of these things, but what about recording yourself or recording an instrument or even just recording somebody else? I'm gonna help you with that right now in this section. So this next section is a whole bunch of recording tips, and here is something that is super important. proper mic placement. So first of all, actually, let's just even go back further. Picking the right microphone for what you're doing and what you want to do and the room that you're in is super important. For example, I have this SM7B, great microphone. Everyone knows what it sounds like because podcasters use it. Billie Jean was recorded on this microphone. Like all of that. All of these microphones, people just know what this mic sounds like. So it's really good for talking. It's really good for actually singing in an apartment too. So if you're in a place where you aren't able to really treat the room and you're not able to have like a really loud microphone, you can actually use one of these to help you out. So it's a dynamic microphone and it's a pretty quiet mic. It doesn't pick up a whole bunch of the room. Now, on the other side of that, if you do have a space that you can actually do recordings on and all of that good stuff, I'm actually going to do this and show you what this microphone, now this is a cardioid microphone here, a U87 clone. So I'm going to show you what this one sounds like. Let's just switch over right now. You can notice that this one right here, let's just kind of show you this hard, like the plosives. But you can notice that you hear way more of the room in this microphone than you do in this microphone. So notice how this one's like way more focused, but this one you can kind of hear, I'm kind of the same distance away. You can kind of hear there's more detail. It sounds nice. It sounds full, but also you hear a lot more of the room. So using these kinds of microphones, a large diaphragm condenser, will actually be better for when you have a very well-treated room. So if you're in an apartment or if you have a small like bedroom that's not treated, I would use this microphone or something like it, an SM7B. So the other thing is you want to make sure that you have a pop filter. Notice this has a little foam thing. It's kind of like a pop filter, and the capsule for this microphone is actually back here. So about 6 inches is actually a good distance for you to be at your mic. Same thing with a cardioid microphone too. One of these like microphones that's a U67 or U87 kind of clone. It's actually a great microphone to be able to do that with. So that's just 2 things there, is the proper mic placement and placing things correctly. Now, I'm not going to go into depth about how to mic a guitar, how to mic all of these things. If you want me to, leave a comment below. But the other thing is using a pop filter, like this foam thing, or like what you've seen here. I have a pop filter on top of this, and then I also have another one. This basically stops all the P's and T's from like hitting the capsule too hard. So it really helps, and it softens the voice a bit. So another thing that is going to help you out when you're recording is having good monitor speakers or good headphones. So one thing that I use is I have 2 things. I have Yamaha HS8s. I love them. They sound great. They have great low end and they sound amazing. I could do a review on them if you want me to. Let me know in the comments below. But then I also have these headphones here. These are I forgot the brand. What is the brand? So these are the DT770 Pros. You can kind of see them here on the side. So these are really good for monitoring. They're very comfortable. They sound great. They translate well. You can actually mix on them pretty good too. And they're just all around great headphones for not that much money. So if you want to grab them, you can check out the link in the description. That will be an affiliate link, so you can grab that and I will get a kick off of that. So thank you. But having good headphones and having good speakers, or do not try to record or mix and any of that stuff and monitor your things on like a desktop thing. If you can help it, try to get better speakers or try to get a good set of headphones to help you monitor and hear what you're doing really well. Which actually leads me to another thing. So I know a lot of people don't have access to another space, or if you do have access to another space, you probably can't treat it. If you live in an apartment like I do, I can't treat it as crazy as I want to. And I also share this space with my wife, and that's totally fine. But if you can figure out how to get your gear, the right gear in the right space, you can actually get a great recording. I've recorded a bunch of vocals, and you can actually hear what the vocals will sound like in a room like this. There's like no treatment in this room aside from like this corner, and that's not even really doing anything. So recording in a quiet space is actually super important. I live in New York, so there's always something going on. So I'm recording at night right now, and it's great that it's quiet outside on the street. But if I try to record during the day, there's construction, there's people honking, there's police sirens all outside the window, and not a great time to record. So try to find a quiet time and a quiet environment to record. So you're like, hey, Kirk, I've got a good microphone. I've got a good set of headphones. I got the pop filter. I got the quiet environment. Now, how do I actually get it into my computer? But you don't even know how to do that. So I'm going to show you right now. You just have to have an audio interface. Basically, what the interface does is it connects your analog signal, converts it to digital, and puts it into your computer. That's what it does, and it's the in-between thing. not all interfaces are made the same. They're not equal. You know, you can't expect to get like $1 million sound out of a $25 interface. It's just not going to happen. And you're not going to be able to get like a super high quality sound out of something that's like super cheap. But with a caveat, you can actually spend money on something like a Scarlett 2i2 or something like UAD Spark or something like that, and you can get a really, really, really great sound. For example, I'm using the Apollo Twin and an Apollo X8. I love the Apollo series from UAD, and they are so good, and you can actually hear what it sounds like. Comes with great software, and the software sounds amazing, and you're able to get a really clean, awesome sounding vocal going right in. So I would say use a really good interface. Try not to go cheap on this. This is one of those things that like if you get a good one, it'll last you forever. The Apollo Twin, I like live and die by it right now, and I love it so much. And I've had it for a couple of years. I've recorded so many songs on here, and I've also, you know, you can also expand it as well. So I would say get into the Apollo line if you can. If you can't, the Focusrite stuff is also really great. You're like, okay, great, Kirk, I've got all the things I need to record, but what about software instruments? What about this thing, MIDI? MIDI? No, it's MIDI. MIDI. I'm not even going to tell you what it stands for. I don't actually know what it stands for, but it's basically the signals that you're sending from a controller or from your keyboard into the computer, and it registers it, and you're able to trigger sounds from a software instrument or something like that. So for example, if you take a look at the screen here, we have Massive X here, and I also have this controller right here, which is a M Audio. Let's see if I could show you. You're going to want to get something like, let's just pull this out because, okay. So you're going to want to get something like this. This is an M Audio MIDI controller. It's an Oxygen Pro Mini. You don't have to get this exact one. You can get some of the other ones. This is like a smaller keyboard that you can use to trigger sounds inside of your DAW inside of Logic here. So it's super easy. It usually comes with a USB cable, and you just kind of plug it in and it just works. Usually MIDI controllers is like a standard for them. I can sit here and just play these keys, and all of these things are mapped to certain things. Even these pads are mapped. Those can be mapped. All of this stuff can be mapped. So for example, and when I say mapped, I mean you can actually assign them to control things. So let's go into here. Actually, what I want to do is pull up Serum, which is another great plugin. Let's grab it. And then we can go into here, and I'm going to pick this new library that I got. It's really pretty sounding. So you can play these things in, but then you can also learn the piano roll editor. So if you're not able to play right away, and I will really highly encourage you to learn how to play keys a little bit so that you'll be able to move around and actually record things. But you can actually pull up your keyboard editor by doing P. And when you hit the P key, it'll pull up this piano roll here, and you can basically just click in all the notes that you want to play. So, and then that will play whatever you want it to play. And you know, like whatever you put in here, it'll do. So if I just, you know, click around, that sounds crazy, but you get the point. So there's another thing that you can do with MIDI, and you can actually just like record a sound and then use things like quantize to make sure that your playing is, you know, tight to the grid or even swinging if you want it to. Let me just show you an example really quick. I'll just like record a bit of keys. So I didn't record that to the metronome. And if we listen to it, we notice that it's not on the bar. So what we could do is actually select all of these things and move them around manually, just like this. If we wanted to, just move them to where they're supposed to be. But you notice how it's not exactly perfect. So if we wanted to fix it even more, we hit Command A to select all of them. And then we have this quantize section here. Now this is the other tip, is using quantize to help your MIDI be better. You can quantize it by 1/16, and quantize basically is snapping it to the grid. So you can see all these little grid marks here, right? So 1/16 will be a 16th note. So let's go ahead and hit Q right here. And you see how it kind of snapped everything to the grid. So now it is a computer. Sometimes there's like interesting things. Like that last one is kind of cool, but this one right here is wrong. So let's move it over. So now we notice that it's like a little bit too rigid. Say we wanted to make it sound a little bit less rigid. We can actually do that here. So there's things called swing. We select that kind of swing. We select the track and we hit quantize, and now it moved everything just a little bit. You could do a lot of things with MIDI, and you can do a lot of things with quantizing your MIDI, and there's a whole slew of things I'm not actually going into, but for beginners, using quantize when you're playing your keys and you're playing your MIDI instruments will help you get things sounding a little bit better and not as wild. And here's another tip really quick. Make sure you record to a click track. I didn't actually record to one here, but I have pretty decent timing, and I can record without the click. So I'm not like perfect, but recording to a click will always make it better and will always bring you closer to actually not having to use quantize if you know how to play. And plus, you become a better player that way anyway, so you might as well do it. And so you have a slew of instruments in Logic Pro that you can actually use. You're probably like, Kirk, I don't have Serum, I don't have Massive, but you have all of these. You have Alchemy, you have Drum Designer, you have Drum Synth, EFM1, you have all of these synths that you can actually use, and Retro Synth is actually really sick. So let's listen to this. This is probably set to a mono synth. Oh no, it's not. But you could do so many cool things with this. You can play around with the ADSR, you can play around with filters, you can add a flanger, glide, all this stuff. It's really cool. So these synths actually also come with a bunch of sounds if you're looking for good sounds. I would start with these, but then I would also try to get, different sounds if you can. So let's just see what this one, let's see, that's a pad, strings, keyboard. Let's see what this sounds like. This is cool. So I can actually even play with this, play around with this stuff, and I'm just messing around with stuff. So get in here, mess around with these different instruments, find things that you really like, and you'll find that the third-party stuff is usually a little bit better, but this is a really great place for you to start and play around with things and even just get ideas out, because you can always replace the instrument if you have the MIDI. That's a cool thing about MIDI too. So another thing that you can do with MIDI is automate the parameters, and I'm not going to go too deep into how many things you can actually do, but I'm going to jump into Massive X here, or no, Serum. Let's jump into Serum. So this creator has given us a bunch of macros to be able to automate. Now, what if we wanted to automate those? We can hit the A key, and that brings up our automation lanes. And now if you don't know where to go, you can click on this and you can select this, but look at all of these things here, and it might be hard sometimes to find what you want to automate. Here's a really cool thing that you can do. You can do this with audio as well. If you have effects on your audio track, you can select these automation modes and you could set it. This is what I do literally all the time. I select it and set it to write mode. Cool. It gives you that thing. Like just know that whatever you do now will be written to the track. And so if you have automation there before, it won't it won't last because you're going to overwrite it. So now the next thing I do is hit record. Whatever thing I want to change, I change it, and notice as I'm changing it, you could see it writing it. So you could do a whole bunch of cool things with this, and now we can set it back to read mode, and now you can change these things and it won't mess up your automation. See how these are moving? So you could do this with pretty much anything in Logic Pro. Just make sure that you are paying attention to these modes. If you want it to be safe, you can use the touch mode. So whatever you touch, it'll go there and then stay to that, or it'll change. Write mode overwrites everything, and read mode reads it. And you can actually even go in and just set up automation in here. If you zoom in, you could just click points here and you can click and drag it, and it'll do it, which is cool. So automation is really great. You can do this with audio as well, and that's a really cool way you can automate MIDI parameters and all of that cool stuff too. Okay, so in Logic, we also have these MIDI effects. So what are these MIDI effects? What do they do? They're not instruments, they're different. So for example, if I just make a new track here, and if I wanted to say, make this play a chord, I can actually put this chord trigger in here, and you can actually pick different kinds of chords you want to play. So let's say we wanted keyboard voicings blues left hand. Not super musical for this one. There are better ones, like Cthulhu is actually really good. So for example, if we go in here, this is one that I referred to earlier. See what I'm saying? You can go through these art presets, or you can click into here, presets in here as well. You can go to diatonic, go here. I'm only playing one note right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of cool. So MIDI effects, you can do a whole bunch of cool things. You can do things like arpeggiator. So if I hold down a bunch of notes, change the variation. You can change a whole bunch of cool things. I use arpeggiator a lot when I'm just trying to add layers with synths that I don't want to actually draw in. But you can play around with a bunch of cool MIDI effects, which will actually unlock another thing in your instrument and another way to play your instrument that might actually help you create chords or melodies or just arps and stuff like that. So try out those MIDI effects and those will be super helpful. Here are some just general tips to help you, not get burnt out and not get bored. So first things first, it's sometimes creating music, hearing the sound in your head and being able to do it. It takes a lot of time to be able to close the gap on what that sounds like. So you hear it in your head and you can actually materialize it in your DAW in Logic. So just take your time. Don't worry about it. Don't be too hard on yourself. You're always going to be growing. Get addicted to learning and growing in your craft, and you'll definitely have a fun time doing it. And here's another thing that's actually like super important that will save your life, like literally will save your life. Say you have this big project that is amazing and you're like, yes, this is going to be great. And then Logic crashes. You forgot to save. Don't forget to save. Command S will always be your best friend. Save regularly, just avoid. You just never know, like if the program's going to crash. Varying factors can actually make it crash. So Command S, save your tracks, save your sessions, and even save multiple versions of your sessions. There's many ways you can do that. Another thing that is actually kind of cool that will help you become a better songwriter and a better producer is actually taking breaks. I often will take a break to go and wash the dishes. I often will take a break to, just do something else that is not music related. And that will help your brain actually process the things you're trying to solve and process the problems you're trying to solve, but then also to give your ears a break when you're listening, and it'll just you can come back to the session with fresh ears. So that's one thing you want to make sure you do, is take a lot of breaks and continue watching tutorials like this. You'll always pick up new things. I love to watch other people creating stuff online. I love to watch people, just how they do it, because I get inspired by that. It's a great way to learn and a great way to grow as well as a producer. So make sure you're always learning and you're watching these tutorials or watching people in the studio, learn about other artists, learn about how they're creating their story and that kind of thing. It's a really cool thing to be able to do, and there's a lot of people who are trying to help out in doing this online. Okay, so this might actually seem like, okay, Kirk, I'm not going to actually do this. And it's actually read the manual, because there's a lot of things in the manual that most people don't even use. And I know for a fact that there's a lot of things that are in the manual that I don't even use. So I got to continue to read the manual as well and learn all of these things. So take some time to actually read the manual for Logic Pro, and you could actually even find tools to help you kind of like read it to you or all of that kind of stuff. So read the manual and actually take what you read and apply it right away, because then you can get really quick in Logic and actually maybe even make some videos that I can watch and be inspired by. And here's the last thing, and this is something that's actually made me, and here's the last thing, this is something that's actually kept me doing this for years and years and years, and it's the fact that I always experiment. I always play this game, like the what if game, like what if I tried this? What if I used this synth in the way that it's not supposed to be used, or use this plugin in the way that it's not technically supposed to be used? What if I did that? And just have fun, experiment with Logic Pro. There's going to be a whole bunch of things you're going to make mistakes on. There's going to be some things that won't actually sound good that you try. But then sometimes you will land on something that sounds incredible and you are like, oh snap, you're like not supposed to use that plugin that way, or not supposed to record in this way, but it's crazy. I'll give you an example. For example, I have my track Lay It Down, and again, if you haven't heard it, check it out in the link in the description and also in the pinned comment down below. So almost there. Okay, so for example, I used a snare as the lead for this track. So let's go ahead and just listen to it really quick. So this is actually a snare drum. It's actually this right here. Let me just show you. It's a snare drum. That's what it is. It's a snare from Sophie, shout out Sophie, and that made the lead. That's the actual lead. Hard. That's so hard. So yeah, have fun, experiment. Don't feel like learn the rules and then break the rules of making music, and you'll go so far. So if you like this video and you made it this far, thank you so much. And I hope you like this video and subscribe it and share it to a friend that's also learning how to produce, and leave a comment below on what you want me to go deeper in the next video. Peace.